Imagine this. A food product leaves the facility in perfect packaging conditions, looks safe, smells safe, passes all visual inspections. But somewhere in the system, a hazard was missed. And within days, customers are falling sick. Food safety is no longer about reacting to outbreaks. It's about preventing food safety risks and hazards even before they reach any customer. So you see, in the year 2011, the United States Congress passed the most sweeping food safety reform in over 70 years, called the Food Safety Modernization Act, or FSMA for short. You see, with that single legislative swift, FSMA transformed the regulatory authorities of the United States Food and Drug Administration, shifting its focus from a reactive approach of food safety issues and outbreaks to a preventive approach of food safety. And at the center of this transformation lies one operational requirement that every covered food facility must understand, which is HARPC, Hazard Analysis Risk-Based Preventive Controls. This HARPC is not just a simple regulatory change. It's a philosophical shift in how we think about risks, responsibilities, and accountability in food production and in the food supply chain. In this series, we will discuss what hazard analysis risk-based preventive controls really is, why it matters globally, and how to implement it practically, and most importantly, how it impacts the United States, the European Union, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and other food businesses globally. So, you see, to understand hazard analysis risk-based preventive controls, we must first understand why the Food Safety Modernization Act was necessary and why it was implemented.
And alerted the country to the hidden dangers in our food.
What do we want? Clean meat!
Recalls of contaminated food in this country have increased five-fold.
Tainted spinach, contaminated cantaloupe,
Unpasteurized apple juice.
More than 20 years later, tens of millions of Americans still get food poisoning each year.
Just a couple of bites, that's all it took.
And some say progress hasn't been fast enough.
We need, I hate to say it, but bodies in the street before we get it.
The reality was that before the establishment of the Food Safety Modernization Act, FSMA, the United States Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, often took actions largely after a food safety issue or contamination event occurred. Recalls followed outbreaks, investigations followed foodborne illnesses, and many HACCP systems outside the seafood, juices, meat, and poultry productions were inconsistently applied. At the time, the major food safety and quality system was reactive, and some few major outbreaks were those involving the Salmonella species, the Listeria monocytogenes, Escherichia coli 0157.
But the beef was contaminated before it even reached the restaurant.
Health officials suspect the original source of contamination was at the slaughterhouse.
Beef carcasses can become contaminated with dangerous bacteria, falling off the production line into blood or feces on the floor.
Inside slaughterhouses, USDA inspectors were using the same techniques they'd used for nearly a century to check carcasses.
The Agriculture Department relies mainly on the poking and sniffing by inspectors to find...
We're focused on what we could see, what we could feel, what we could smell. Unhappily, bacteria cannot be detected by any of those methods.
Nobody was paying attention to E. coli 0157. The beef industry thought of bacteria as just a normal part of meat, and that it's the consumer's responsibility to cook it.
The only point of prevention currently documented, proven, and available in the food chain
is the cooking process.
Over the objections of the beef industry, the USDA for the first time set a zero-tolerance policy for E. coli 0157 in raw ground beef by declaring it an adulterant.
It means that you cannot sell the product if it's contaminated. And if it is contaminated, you have to pull it off the market. That made it like, sawdust in sausages. It can't be there.
The USDA would now test for E. coli 0157, and beef suppliers would be responsible for getting rid of it.
Those food safety incidences exposed systemic vulnerabilities in the food production, in sanitation, supply chains, in ingredient sourcing, and in preventive thinking. The food system had become global, but the preventive controls had not evolved at the same pace.
Bill Marler says a crisis-by-crisis response isn't enough to prevent the next outbreak.
You look back on when changes happened, and it's always after a disaster. It'd be great to figure out a way to make those changes before that even happened.
That outbreak of E. coli is spreading rapidly, and it's...
What we started to learn was that this bug was showing up in other places. People still got sick, so where's it coming from?
All across the country, grocery stores are pulling bags of spinach off the shelf as the government races to try to pinpoint the source of the deadly contamination.
Investigators eventually traced the E. coli to pigs and cow droppings on a ranch in California near where the spinach was grown.
The growers did not understand the risks. It can run into the water supply. It can be carried on birds. It can be carried on equipment. It can be picked up by other animals. Leaves get harvested, processed, put in a bag, and wind up in the consumer's dinner table.
This case is calling into question how the entire food supply is monitored.
FDA virtually never inspects farms. There were no requirements in terms of controlling this type of a risk on a farm back in 2006.
And that was part of the problem.
However, thankfully, in the year 2011, the Food Safety Modernization Act, the FSMA, changed the paradigm. It changed the paradigm from reaction to prevention to risk-based controls to supply chain accountability. FSMA changed the paradigm. It introduced mandatory hazard analysis. It required scientifically justified preventive controls. It extended accountability into the supply chains, and it gave the Food and Drug Administration the mandatory recall authority.
The food safety system is dysfunctional. It's slow to react to science. It's slow to react to change. We need rules and regulations in place that are going to prevent the problems, not just react to them.
Prevention was no longer optional. It became enforceable with the requirement of hazard analysis, risk-based preventive controls, HARPC, to ask food facilities, food businesses, their supply chains more questions. This type of questions would shift from correction of food safety risks to the anticipation of those risks and hazards, and this was what defines modern food safety leadership. In our next episode, we will break down exactly what hazard analysis risk-based preventive controls require under federal law, who must comply, and what an FSMA-compliant food safety plan must contain. Because understanding HARPC is not just about compliance, it's about protecting your customers and protecting your food business. I am Raphael Sampson, your food safety and quality consultant. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next episode.